Already a pretty permanent fixture in our lives, and brace yourself for permanent load shedding as Eskom announces its plan for alternating between stage 2 and 3 load shedding for the next 2 years. Hilton Trollip is an energy expert and joins me now. Hilton, I've been saying it's a bit of a kind of non-surprise, as grim as it may be. Load shedding, we've been stuck with it. It makes our lives very difficult, and now all we know is that, well, Level 3, you're set for that probably permanently for the next 2 years. What does it change?
Hello, Erin. Good afternoon. Sunday afternoon. We'll be talking about load shedding for a long time. What this changes is not what we've been saying for the past 3 years, actually. I started saying this, but definitely not for the past 6 months. What it does change is that Eskom, in more than 2 hours, including more than half, probably 45 minutes, detailed questioning by the press, in a very calm, professional way, very transparently outlined what the situation is. And yep, they've confirmed what we've been saying. 2 or 3, at least for the next 2 years. Also, what they've said very much is that's the best. But on a slide that they put up, they say they're only going to be able to implement the plan they've put on the table if they get significant external support. That was in the presentations. And then later on, when they were pressed under questioning, Andre de Ruyter, the group CEO, said very clearly, he said, "We need additional capacity." I'm writing out the quote. "As we have been saying for the past 3 years, the ultimate solution to load shedding is the addition of utility-scale generation to the system." And his chief operating officer, Overalls, said, we can have all the money in the world, but if we cannot get more capacity onto the grid, we will just stay where we are, because we need the extra capacity so we can take the coal stations off the grid for long enough to fix them properly. But once again, none of this is new. What it does do is it contradicts a number of statements coming out of government. And remember, Eskom isn't government, it's an SOE. So out of government in the past few months, Minerals and Energy Minister Gwedi Mantashe first said he could fix it all in 6 months. Then he changed it from 6 months to 12 months. The Finance Minister said 12 to 18 months. But I'd continue to go with the Eskom estimates, which are based on a lot of really good data and analysis. So if I had to sum it up.
Please go ahead.
So if I had to sum it up, it's now official. We're on 2 to 3 permanently until further notice. They say 2 years, but they've put a plan on the table. It's a 9-point plan. They were asked, is this plan any different from the one put on the table in 2020? Nope. It's the same. What they're saying is they're going to try and fix the coal stations, but they need external help. They need extra capacity on the grid, and that can only come from outside Eskom.
So what does that look like then, in very practical kind of lay terms, adding more capacity to the grid? Is that, opening it up to the private sector? Is it putting solar panels all over the Northern Cape? What does that mean?
Yes, it's both of those things. They have opened it up to the private sector, and they've really come to the party. And also it means, as many, which they're also doing, trying to encourage everybody that can, to put a PV panel on their roof. That'll help a lot, but not nearly enough to get rid of load shedding. What we need is the government, it's called the Independent Power Producer Program. That needs to get into gear. The Department of Mineral Resources and Energy have kind of got it half into gear again, but they're 2 big problems. One, it's very inflexible and intransparent. So when it doesn't work, just bits and pieces of it work. So that's the one. So they've had these really big bid windows, but then they award bids, but then things change and then the thing doesn't work. So it must be made more flexible. And for it to be made more flexible, what we need to believe from the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy is they want to make the program work. And the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy has consistently said they don't think renewable energy can solve the problem, which is wrong. So that's the one thing. We need that fundamental change in attitude. 2, we need cooperation between government departments, because the latest problem is there's not enough transmission grid capacity to put new generation onto the grid. Well, they can put it onto the grid, but the grid's not big enough. We can and we should prioritize expanding the national transmission grid and some distribution grid from now as fast as possible. International funding is available for that. Local funding is available. We can expropriate the necessary land, etc. And so that really has to happen quickly.
So just, if possible, Mr. Trollip, in real lay terms, if you could use an analogy to explain this distinction between generation and the transmission grid, this kind of infrastructure or architecture that's needed to then load the transmission, oomph onto, how would you describe it? Just help us.
Okay, so the transmission grid is like, if you think of South Africa's road network, they're all the highways, the N roads, the N1, N2, N3, and then the R roads, the regional highways. The transmission grid is the highways. Now imagine that the highways were full and we needed to transport more stuff. What we'd have to, and we have to transport the stuff, we'd have to expand the highways. It's much easier to expand electricity transmission grid than roads, because what you do is where the existing transmission grids, you can add capacity there, and that can be done quickly. So that's what adding to the grid means. What generation means is, let's say the roads were full of carrying mealies. All we ate was mealies. That's electricity. And we weren't farming enough mealies. So the first thing is, there's always a lag. You have to plant more mealies, and then you have to mill more mealies. So I've just dreamt this up now.
It's very
so
helpful.
The generation side is we need more mealies, and you can't just suddenly get them. Also, you can't import them. That's the difference. We could get big boats with mealies to come, but you can't carry electricity like that.
Yes.
So we have to grow the mealies here, and as they get grown, they get put straight onto this transport network.
Yes.
We need to grow a lot more mealies, and we need a bigger transport network.
I think we'll stop with the analogy there, but you did mention ships, and that does make me think of real ships, not metaphoric ones, car power ship. How does that all play into some of the issues we're having around power, electricity, generation, transmission?
So those car power ships, the big problem there was that they were being given two big environmental. They didn't pass environmental tests, very important ones, and then they wanted 20-year contracts, and they're very expensive. So, and also they would provide so we've got a shortage of at least 6 to 8 units at the moment, gigawatts they're called. The car power ships could provide about 1.2 of that, maybe a bit more. So don't solve the problem, and also the contracting method. This is what I said earlier on. They were part of that IPP process being run by DMRE. And the DMRE simply is doing that process really badly, even for something that the minister really wants, namely the car power ships. He can't even make that work. So that's where there's a big bottleneck at the moment. But what I want to say, Aaron, what's happened today is we've now been told very clearly, as if we didn't know, this is not going to be sorted out soon. Also, there are big risks of it getting worse.
Yes. 3,
external support is needed even to sort it out, never mind to stop it getting worse, but it's also needed to stop it getting worse. And 3, we need much more cooperation and support from other parts of government. There was one additional thing. I was very worried. There was this excellent executive management team answering every question that was needed. And then questions were asked about, well, now 3 important members of that team are being lost. One's left already, head of generation. 2 are going soon. The question was, who's going to replace them? I'm very worried about that side of things. Government really has to make it clear, not just in diplomatic statements, that it actually supports Eskom, and not just an Eskom that does what it wants it, some minister wants it to do, but Eskom as per our laws. We really have to tell the executive management team and all the workers at Eskom that we actually support them, not that they're undermining the state.
We're running short on time, but just on that, a last quick question. In terms of the recruitment process to replace Director Oberholzer and so on, what did you take away from the briefing today?
that they've been talking about it, but they've done nothing. Sorry to be so hard.
Yeah, March is not far off.
I listened to the chair of the board speaking, and it was all blah, blah. There was nothing concrete there. We've got a committee that's looking into it, kind of thing. I think they've got a big problem there.
All right, we will keep our eyes tabbed and peeled on those changes coming at Eskom. Mr. Trollip, thank you so much for your time and your input on the ongoing, persistent, pervading, ad nauseum Eskom challenges. But as Mr. Trollip says, we now have a plan. We've been warned that without support and input, it could get worse, but that the load shedding is said to be at 2 to 3 level for the next 2 years.